Hey guys, it's Nikki with Our Simple Life, and I'm going to go over a garden tour with you, what I have growing in my fall garden, and what I plan on doing, and pruning, and showing you how I preserve some of the things out of my garden this year. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to be doing a little garden tour today to show you what I'm doing in my garden, what I have growing in my garden. So I'm going to walk to the other side of the garden and kind of show you what I'm going to be pulling out, what I'm going to be putting in. And we're going to start on this row. Well, right here. This is my asparagus bed, and it's pretty much died back except for a couple small little sprigs. We've got a couple coming up right here. I don't think that they're going to make it through the winter. They're probably going to die back like the rest of this. And I'm going to mulch it real good, and it'll start coming back in the spring. So over here to this bed, my tomato plants are looking really sad. I'm just trying to keep them pruned as best I can until I can try to get all of these blushing and turning red so that we can try to use them before the plants completely die. So right here we've got lima beans. They're still looking pretty good. We're supposed to have a frost, and the highs for the next week are going to be in the 40s and 50s. So I'm going to try to leave these and see how they do. I don't know how cold it has to get to kill them, but they are still producing and still maturing some beans. So I'm just going to leave them for a little while longer and probably put some cabbage or something right here. In the rest of this bed, I have potatoes growing right here. These are all potatoes right here. And right here, we have a black-seeded Simpson lettuce. So that's just a little diversity. We had a couple of holes, so I put broccoli right here where I transplanted. This is a volunteer zinnia. It probably won't make it through the freeze. A couple more potatoes, another broccoli. This is a patty pan squash. And we've got a couple little buds on it. It's looking really sick. It probably won't make it much longer. Again, another sick tomato plant. But it's got several more tomatoes, so I'm hoping that those will blush. That black-seeded Simpson lettuce. A couple more broccolis that I transplanted. I'm not sure what volunteer that is or this, but we'll let it mature. And here's some bell peppers. I have heard that you can pull them out of your garden and repot them and heavily prune them back, and they will come back next year. These I grew from seed this year, so I'm going to try and see if that works. I've got several pepper plants that I'm going to be pulling up today and trying to get them into the greenhouse or my garage until I get the greenhouse finished. These are some collards that I planted from seed, so they're just brand new sprouts. Here's a couple of beans that I was growing for seed, so we'll see if they mature enough to get some seeds out of. So that's that bed. We're going to move over here to this one. On the other side, you see some tomato plants. These, I just had a couple of kidney beans, so I planted them to see how they are doing, or how they will do. I don't think that they will make any more. I got 2 little pods off of them. They don't, I mean, there's one more flower here that I'm going to try and see if it will mature. It may be too cold, but this plant is really sick. So I'm going to just go ahead and pull it out because it doesn't have any buds on it. It's barely got any leaves. So I'm going to pull that out and get something else going right here. This is red Malabar spinach. And one right there, and one right here, and one right here. And I planted it from seed late in the fall. It likes the heat, so I'm not sure if it will make anything, but it's worth a shot. Here you see a couple little carrots, and here, and right here. I planted a whole packet of carrots in this area, and it just did not do well. I've got my kale right here. This is a white alma pepper that I'll try to be pulling up today. Now these are really tiny peppers, you see, and I will harvest what I can and try to save the plant for next year. And you see all my yellow onions right here. This will take up residency for the next several months. I had beans earlier in the season right here, so they're trying to send up some volunteer plants, and I will just keep those weeded out because they won't make it through the winter here. Here's a couple other puny pepper plants. They didn't produce anything. You see they've got some buds here, but it's going to turn off cool and they won't make it. So I'm going to try to prune them back and get a head start for next year. I'll also be planting some from seed, and we'll just see how they do in comparison. There's another kale. And over there on the other side of the bed, I planted more kale from seed. So I will hopefully be getting some kale from that as well. And I just pulled up some soybean right here that I was growing for seed. Here's one more. But that plant is looking, it's not as bad as the other ones were. So I'm going to leave that and see if we can continue to get it to mature so I can save the seeds. And this is an Ashley cucumber that I planted really late in the season. It is just not looking healthy. You see the leaves there. And we're just gonna probably pull that up and get something going in this area that will make it through the winter. Here's some radishes that I think have really gone too far. They look really woody. The bottoms of them may be okay. Let's harvest and try to get something else going in this bed. Some lettuce or cabbage, because I've got a lot of broccoli scattered throughout the garden. A couple more broccoli transplants. Here's another tomato plant that I'm really just trying to hang on until we can get them to turn red, or at least close enough that I can leave them on the countertop. Here's a couple more pepper plants that I'll be transporting today. I planted these early in the season. Maybe the cold stunted the growth, but here we got some tiny peppers. I'll harvest them so that I can put them in recipes, but maybe we'll get a head start on peppers next year. And this is the kale that I showed you. And some more Ashley cucumbers. You see, they look really sick. They're very tasty. I've gotten a couple off of this. You see some little seeds right here, or, starting cucumbers, but I just don't know how long they'll make it. Here's another one underneath here. So I'm going to leave them and see if these will harvest, but the other vines don't even have small cucumbers starting. I just took out a basil plant here, so it was dropping several leaves. Now, this is a celery that I wasn't growing celery, and I went to the grocery store to get some for my Thanksgiving recipes, and this is what I didn't use. So I stuck it in the ground, and we'll just see what happens. It's an experiment, so I'll keep you updated. Now back here, we have an eggplant that I planted early in the season, and it is just now starting to grow. So I'm thinking maybe it's just too hot here for this eggplant. And then we've got a couple more tomatoes here that we're just waiting to blush. And underneath them, we've got some bunching onions that also came from the grocery store. And they're looking pretty good. And when I need green onions, I just come out here and pick off, and they continue to grow. So that experiment has done really well. At the very least, it's prolonged the life of the onions that I got from the grocery store. So I will stick these in my harvest basket. Now over here, I just pulled out a whole bunch of beans. I think they were at the end of their life cycle. So I transported a whole bunch of broccoli, and they seem to be doing all right through the transplant. I watered them in good, and then 2 days later we got a pretty good rain, and then 3 or 4 days later we got flooded, which was yesterday. So, and then it's supposed to rain again tomorrow, so I think these will stay good and watered. You'll see I've got a couple of carrots growing in here, and some basil that I'm going to be pulling out today, and the last of my cherry tomatoes. This is my cherry tomato. It's got just a very few left. We're trying to get them to turn red, and then I'll be pulling out this plant as well. So you see there's several still on the plant, but we're just letting it run its life cycle. Now, you see where the broccoli leaves off on the other side, and I've got turnip greens planted here. I planted these turnips a little earlier, and you see they are a whole lot more mature. So I'm probably going to be pulling these soon and trying to make some turnips and turnip greens. Now this is some basil that's just about run its life course. It's getting kind of sick. So the frost is probably going to kill it. I will probably go ahead and pull this out and get something planted that we can have throughout the season. Here's a couple of bean plants that I planted for seed. And we have put up some seeds from these, and hopefully we'll get more next year. So the cold will probably not do it any favors. So I may leave this one that has some blooms on it. Just got a couple more blooms here. I may leave that vine and just see if it produces, and probably pull out this vine that is looking really sick and doesn't really have any blooms on it. Now, this was some sort of bush bean, and you see they've got several beans under there. And I've got okra over here. This is 2 different kinds of okra. The crimson spineless is in the back, and this front okra was some kind of dwarf hybrid, and I really liked this, but I'm a little skeptical of saving it for seeds because it being a hybrid, I'm not quite sure if it will produce true to size or true to type. So what I will probably do is get out here today and harvest these few that we've got out here. I was saving that one for seed, And I'll probably take it inside and let it dry out. Same thing for this one over here. I'll pull these up and get something else planted right here that we will use throughout the cold season. Yeah, see, I just stepped on my harvest basket. So, let me get it picked back up. These are the soybeans that I pulled up. I had started harvesting the okra before I decided to video. Now, these are potatoes that we will leave, but I've got one more tomato plant growing in it. This still got several tomatoes on it, so we're just waiting on those to turn. And in this bucket, I've got a couple of pepper plants that did really well this year. You see I've got some peppers on there to harvest, and I will try to not disturb those on the other side because those are potatoes. Here we've got elephant garlic in these 2 rows, and some more onions. These will, I don't know if you can see that or not. I'll try to replant that. My fingers are so dirty from working in the garden. I'm sorry, y'all. I'll try to get that planted a little better so that it can grow a little more, mature a little more. Here's some more Danvers carrots. They're coming up kind of small. They're new plants. And some broccoli transplants. One more tomato plant right here. I've still got a zucchini that's producing, so I will leave it a little longer. And more broccoli. Another cherry tomato. You see it's still got a lot more fruit. So we're going to leave it and see if we can get them to ripen. Oh, I forgot these 2 small beds over here. So we've got regular garlic over here. And you see these sprouts are from this raspberry vine, raspberry bush. They've just kind of sprouted everywhere along the dirt. So hopefully we'll get raspberries out of this bed next year also. And then in this bed, we've got potatoes, red potatoes growing. And you see the plants are still nice and green. We want to wait until those start to die back before those potatoes are really ready to harvest. So back to this bed, we've got a couple of broccoli transplants. And here's a couple more bell pepper plants that I'll be pruning back and trying to salvage for next year. A young tomato plant that probably won't make it. The same with this one hanging out of the bed. One lonely carrot right here. And transplant broccoli. That one is not looking so healthy, but we'll see if it bounces back. Another potato plant and marigolds that will be pruned out here shortly. Here I've got another potato bucket. Now this pepper plant has looked sick all season long, so I'm going to try to replant that and see if we can bring it back to life next year. But it's already in a pot that can be moved around, so I'll try to just, you see it's got some root exposure. I'll try to cover it up some and mulch it real good and see how it does next year. And then this was my first year putting in a legit garden, and so I tried to do some in tires, and after doing research I've just decided I'm not going to do tires anymore. So I'm going to pull these pepper plants out and put them in buckets and try to get them in the garden again next year. So these are both my new beds. Before I move on to those, see my bathtub in the background? That's got all potatoes in it as well. So when that starts to die back, then we'll get potatoes. And I may plant lettuce back in there, or a couple of cabbages or something. So back to my new beds. I tried to plant onions here in the very first row. It doesn't look like they've made too well. And then we've got lettuce. And here we've got broccoli that needs to be thinned out. But you see I've got a ton of broccoli throughout the garden already. As a gardener, it just breaks my heart to have to prune. But I know that they need their space in order to grow appropriately. In this row, we've got radishes. And I don't know if you can see how well these radishes are doing, but... And the thing is, we've got so many radishes, and my family doesn't really even eat them. So, I'll put them on salads, but I don't think I'm eating them fast enough. So this row here is a mixed lettuce. So we've been eating on this a lot. This next row is broccoli right here. And I need to thin that out some as well. And you can see my spinach poking in through up under there. We've been eating a lot of spinach. And here's a row of lettuce that's kind of shying away because of being under the radishes. It's just not getting enough sunlight. And you see these radishes under here. Let's pick one of these big ones. You see right here. This is a gourmet radish. So I just need to come in and thin out so that lettuce underneath can get some more sunlight. We've got a small row of lettuce on the other side of the radishes and broccoli on the end. My family absolutely loves broccoli, so I wanted to plant a good bit of it, but we certainly planted a lot. At the first of this row, we got some mixed lettuce, and then broccoli, and more radishes. You see the radishes are just doing amazing. They're just taking off. And we've got some mixed lettuce. Another kind of lettuce on the other side of it right here. More radishes. And we've got spinach over here that we have just been eating off of heavily. And some lettuce and broccoli. And then you can kind of see some of the onions that I planted sprouting up. Let's get some of this ground cover out of here. Go ahead and pull that up. This is brand new soil. So I'm surprised that it has seed like that in it. So that is my garden tour. And I will go ahead and bring you guys along for digging up these peppers and getting them transplanted and pruned. Okay, so here's my white Alma paprika pepper. We got a couple of peppers on here. So we're gonna go ahead and harvest this. Harvest anything that I have on here. And we are going to prune this back super heavy. I'm gonna start up here. So we've got all of this foliage that we're cutting off. Make sure that you get any peppers that you could harvest. And we are going to be brutal because I want this pepper plant to have the best chance of survival for next year. So I'm pruning down as much as I can, because even if I wind up killing it, the frost is going to anyway. So I'm going to prune everything off of here. I'm going to leave just a couple little shoots, so hopefully that's where it'll sprout next year. So I'm going to come out wide around the pepper plant and kind of break it up, break up the ground. These may be some of the outside roots, but I'm hoping to get down deep so that I don't damage the taproot. And I'm gonna just wedge it up and put it into a pot. And I'm gonna come back and put some extra soil and a lot of mulch around it and keep it indoors or in my greenhouse, and sporadically water. Try to even this back up so that I can continue to use the space. Okay, here we are. We got 2 more pepper plants. We got several little tiny bell peppers. I'm going to harvest them just so that I can stick them in some recipes. And then we are going to get quite brutal pruning this plant back so we can try to keep it until next year, because it's pretty healthy. It just waited till really late in the year to produce. So hopefully we can have a jump start on it for next year. So we pruned back all but nubs. And I'm gonna compost the foliage. This is a kale. I'll try to transplant it and see if it'll continue to grow. If not, we've got several. I'm gonna make the big wide circle so we don't damage the taproot. And I'm gonna go ahead and pot both of these in the same pot. Trying to leave as much of the root system intact. You can see it down below. You see the root system down there. And we'll come back and plant something else here for the fall crops. We'll mulch this real well and put it in the greenhouse or inside in the garage, just to keep it out of the cold and the frost this year. Here you'll see everything that I was able to harvest today. I got several radishes, a couple of okra and okra pods to save for seeds, several lima beans and peppers. There's some basil. The Anaheim chili peppers you see are turning red. I will dehydrate those and using chili powder. You see the seeds that I got for the edamame and some green onion. So I think this is a pretty great harvest. Hey guys, thank you for joining me today. I hope that you learned something new, and I hope that I've inspired you to get something growing in your own garden. If you like this content, please be sure to give me a big thumbs up and subscribe so that you can catch my upcoming videos, and also make sure to hit the share button so that you can help my channel grow, and also to encourage others to grow in their garden as well. Thanks again. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.